Welcome back to my new video. My name is Boris from Rembo RC, and in this video I will be working on the TRX-4 shock absorbers. These are a few years old. I think it is time for a rebuild, and for that I will use the 8262 and the 8263, and I will replace the rubber seals, the pistons and the piston shaft, and I hope that it will result in a smoother working shock absorber. So I'm going to start with taking the shock absorbers apart and cleaning them before I can start the rebuild. So let's fast forward a little bit. The shock absorbers are empty, and as you can see, they were a little bit dirty from the inside. That can be two things. It could be that dirt is coming in through the seals, or that the inside, when it is dirty, the piston is rubbing on the cylinder and the aluminium is wearing down a little bit. On the inside of the rubber seal, you can see there's still a little bit dirt left, and you can also see the rough edges. That's a little bit wear and tear on the rubber. I use brake cleaner, a toothbrush and Q-tips to clean the remaining parts of the shock absorbers that I will reuse. And now I'm going to start with mounting the piston to the piston rod. For that, you take obviously the piston, which has these two grooves on them, and I will place these clips on it. Let's start with the bottom one. So I'll use a small tool, press it on gently. Don't need to use too much force, and make sure that all three nudges of the clip are inside the groove. Then place the piston, and then you place the final clip. Now the piston should rotate freely between the clips. If it is not, then you need to do it again. Pistons are all ready. Now I will continue with the shock cap. And when you place this rubber, you need to be sure that you don't damage the rubber on the thread on the shock cap. And then you get this. The shock caps are all ready. Now let's place the retainer ring for the spring. Make sure that you thread it on correctly, that it is not crooked on there, because otherwise you will damage the retainer ring. All spring retainers are in position, and now I will start with mounting the piston inside the shock absorber housing, and I will place the rubber seals. Now when you press it on, make sure that the rubber seal is not twisted and that you don't damage it on the thread. And this is the order in how you put it. Rubber seal, plastic bushing, rubber seal. So before I close it with the lower shock cap, I like to put a drop of shock oil in there for maximum lubrication. Make sure that all the rubber seals are covered before I press it in there. And you need to make sure that you press it in there gently. Rotate it a little bit so that it goes in a little bit smoother. And then I place the shock cap. I put it in almost all the way, not too tight. And then I check if the shock absorber is running smooth. This one is running with a little bit too much resistance. So I will open it up just a little bit. Now it is running a little bit smoother, because if you mount it too tight, the rubbers are compressed on the inside and they press on the shock shaft, creating more friction. So just open it up a little bit so that it runs much smoother. Now all pistons with the rubber seals are mounted inside the shock absorber housing, and you need to make sure that all shock absorbers will have the same stiffness. Now it is time to mount the lower ball joint. To do that, you need to hold down the piston shaft of the shock absorber, but you don't want to damage it. That's why I use a piece of paper, clamp it down, and then I twist on the lower ball joint. And then you screw it on until the end. Now all the shock absorbers are built And now it is time to fill it. So Traxxas provides us with this small, nice manual, and it says to compress the shock absorber all the way and fill it up just above the piston. I will do it a little bit differently, a little bit more practical if you ask me. I just fill it up until halfway of the inside of the threads. I move the piston up and down a little bit so that all the air can escape. And then I will use this small plastic syringe and I will compress the shock absorber all the way and then suck out all the oil that I can. And then I have reached optimal shock fluid levels. My TRX is very lightweight, comes in around 2.5 kilos. And that is why I use the springs with the yellow marker, which have the lowest spring rate possible that Traxxas provide. These are the softest springs that you can get. And that is why I am going to fill it up with 100 weight. And because I fill it up with 100 weight, it will not take me a very long time to clear out all the oil that is trapped underneath the piston. For example, where I filled up the shock absorbers for my Limitless, 2000 weight, and that will take a much longer time to clear out all the oil from underneath the piston. Now these are all filled up. Let's take this one, just move it up and down a little bit. And you can see that the air is coming up, but it is coming up really fast because the shock oil is so thin. When you fill it up too much, and when the piston goes in, the volume inside the shock absorber increases because the piston rod is inside the shock absorber. When that happens, pressure in the oil builds up. Normally, with basher shocks, you have this rubber bulge in the top of the shock absorber cap. When the shock absorber compresses, the pressure rises, the bulge will compress and it will catch up with the increased volume on the inside of the shock absorber. But with these GTS shocks you don't have that. So pressure will build up, and when the pressure is too high, your shock absorber will hydrolock. So now it is closed and it is filled too much and it will hydrolock. And I can press it all I want, but it will not go any further. So what you want is, you want to have some air inside your shock absorber so that the air can compress and catch the pressure which is built up on the inside, so that it doesn't hydrolock and it goes inside all the way. So what I do now is I take out the excess of oil. I extend the shock absorber for around 5 millimeters before I close it up. There's still a little bit of oil coming out. That's okay. Filling up all 4 shock absorbers in a way that they behave all exactly the same, it's very difficult. Because there's no rubber bulge inside the shock absorber, only the small amount of air inside the shock absorber will act as a damper inside. Is the pressure a little bit too high, then it will not fully compress, or it will bounce out when you release it. And is the pressure too low, then when you fully extend the shock absorber, it will get sucked in again. It is nearly impossible to have the shock absorber fully compressed without coming out and have it fully extend without coming in. So you have to find a middle ground, that it comes out a little bit by itself and that it retracts a little bit by itself. It will take some time to adjust. It can be half a drop more or less oil in there. That can make all the difference. So the car is ready. Good for some crawling in the Belgian Ardennes. I am very happy with the result. It runs very smooth. There's more than enough flex on all sides. I want to thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about RC cars, especially the TRX, check out my channel. Then leave a like and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.